G7 cancels joint statement on Ukraine after U.S. opposition.
G7 countries struggled to find common ground on the Ukraine conflict after former President Donald Trump expressed support for Russian President Vladimir Putin and left the summit a day early to return to Washington amid escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. Host nation Canada cancelled plans for a strong G7 joint statement on the war in Ukraine following objections from the US, a Canadian official told reporters. With no joint communique, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who holds this year's rotating G7 presidency, plans to issue a chair's statement when the summit ends on Tuesday evening, June 17th. The statement will call for increased sanctions on Russia and express support for US-led peace efforts, according to two G7 sources. Unlike a joint statement, a chair's statement does not require signatures from other G7 leaders. Prime Minister Carney also announced that Canada would provide $2 billion Canada in new military aid to Kiev, along with fresh financial sanctions against Moscow. Carney noted that during a final meeting before Trump's departure, G7 leaders emphasized the importance of exerting maximum pressure on Russia to compel Moscow to engage in serious peace negotiations. Upon arriving at the G7 summit on Monday, former President Donald Trump stated that the G8 had made a mistake by expelling Russia after President Vladimir Putin ordered the annexation of Crimea in 2014. On Tuesday, the Kremlin responded by agreeing with Trump, saying the G7 is no longer important to Russia and now appears rather useless. According to Reuters, several world leaders had hoped to negotiate trade agreements with Trump during the summit. However, the only deal finalized was the previously announced US-UK trade agreement. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent remained at the summit after Trump's early departure. G7 leaders did agree on 6 joint declarations covering human trafficking and migrant smuggling, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, wildfires, transnational repression, and quantum computing. Trump also supported a G7 statement issued on Monday addressing the escalating Israel-Iran conflict. The statement named Iran as a major source of instability and terrorism in the region and affirmed Israel's right to self-defense.